Good morning. Welcome to another Wine Steward video. Thanks for watching these things. These video newsletters, I guess you could call them, and we do it once a week. Some of you like to read our newsletters, others of you like to watch. Some of you do both, but thank you for keeping in touch any way you can and for walking through that front door and supporting I would call a critical family-owned downtown local friend-operated business. So keep up the good work, folks. And in the meantime, we'll do our part by discovering new things for you, including this white wine that I'll be talking about in about, 3 hours. No, the video won't be that long. We will get to this sooner than later. First a sip, feeling a little parched after those 6 miles I ran this morning before a long walk with the dog. So anyway, not showing off, just letting you know, gotta keep in shape for you people. I'll tell you about that white wine in a second, but let's tell you about this, which is the wine of the week, the wow. The wine of the week is in fact only one wine, finally, of the week. And in fact, this isn't even it. This is the former vintage of the wine of the week. And this is meant to get you thirsty, get you wondering, get you restless, and thinking about attending next Tuesday evening's event, where a really good teacher of wine and good finder of wine will be standing before you if you attend and telling you about not one, but 12 different wines, including the brand new vintage of this. On that very day, we will get in 3 cases of Chateau Montmirail Gigondas, and it will be the 22 vintage. This is one of the last 2 or 3 bottles of the 2020. The importer, Bone Imports, has decided to skip the 21 vintage. Wasn't quite as good. It was good. Many people, I'm sure they did a good job with it. But anyway, Bone Imports is flipping from 20 to 22, which is a very good vintage for the Southern Rhone Valley. Most of you know Gigondas, at least if you've been hanging around with us long enough, to be a village that's very near Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So you could call it the Southern Rhone's second most famous subregion. And the deal is this. I have been tasting this wine for, at least 15 years. I would say that the 2022 that is coming and debuting next Tuesday night is the best I've had in years. It is a fully successful Montmirail Gigondas. I always really like this Grenache Syrah blend. There's a little Mourvèdre in there too. But in 2022, it just hits it, and it's so well bundled, if you will, that you can feel that it has the ability to go for perhaps 15 years in a cool cellar. I intend to stock up on it so that I can drink it for the next 15 years to find out for myself. Just saying, the wine of the week, this ain't it, but you can come in and wipe us out on this really good 2020. It's been on the bar recently, you've loved it there, but want you to know that Paul Bullard, this gentleman who is coming on Tuesday night, his event is especially unique for its variety. Well, let me tell you what we're going to pour. First, we're going to pour 2 white Burgundies, one from the north in Chablis and one from the extreme south in Burgundy, the Macon region. And these are going to be delicious examples of how different Chardonnay can be in Burgundy, and even within Burgundy, how different they can be from each other. So how cool to have a little Burgundy comparison to start things off. We're going to stay in Burgundy and have a very, very good red Burgundy value. This thing costs maybe $34, $35, and to find really good Burgundy at that price on the red side is really tricky these days. You have to be a smart buyer, and Paul found us one. Camus Bouchon, Bourgogne Rouge, if you will, is a really wonderful Pinot Noir from Burgundy, France. So we're going to stay there in Burgundy for 3 different wines. Now a segue, remaining with the Pinot Noir variety, to the famous Rocchioli vineyard of the Russian River Valley for a wine by a small producer called Castelia. Castelia will be shown by Paul, I think, for the 3rd vintage in a row at his annual tasting. So that'll be a nice thing to have had one Pinot from France and then all of a sudden come to the new world for one. Back to the old world for one Italian wine, probably the best Barbera you're ever going to have. From Piemonte, Italy, a producer named Vajra, kind of a weirdly spelled name, V-A-J-R-A, Vajra, Barbera Superiore, Barbera di Alba Superiore. Beautiful, beautiful Barbera. And maybe you've never had such a thing. Well, you're about to if you come on Tuesday night. And then big gear shift. We're going to go to Washington State. How about that? We're going to have a wine made by Cayuse. Cayuse is a producer of, well, let's say $150, $175 bottlings of amazing Syrah, Grenache, and the like. We're going to carry or show you something that costs a little bit less, but still is extremely Cayusian, called Double Lucky. And it's a better value, somewhat more obtainably priced, and really lovely Washington State stuff. And then remaining in Washington, we're going to have Sabaya Cabernet, a producer that is in fact a neighbor of Cayuse, working with much of the same fruit. And this Cabernet Sauvignon is quite delicious. Then how about a break with bubbles? And not just any bubbles, but one of the best champagnes in our experience, called Agripart. Agripart is actually not so easy to get, and we're lucky that Paul is going to bring it. So a beautiful champagne break will happen, and then we're going to go to the Napa Valley for 3 wines. One from Two Old Dogs, a beautiful Cabernet, and then 2 deep, rich, dark reds by Barron's Family, formerly known as Barron's and Hitchcock, if you've ever heard that term. Depends on how long you've been around with wine, but Paul has been representing that wine to us forever and ever. In fact, we've known Paul ever since this store opened over 25 years ago. That's how much we trust him, how reliable he's been, and it's going to be really cool to welcome him back. We would welcome you to the mezzanine too. I can say that we still have several seats available for this event that shows you beautiful variety of wine, and Paul is the guide. So think of that, and especially get restless about, well, one of my favorite kinds of wines in the world, a good Southern Rhone Red, and my favorite vintage of this in many years, debuting that evening. Montmirail Gigondas, the wine of the week, sort of. Move that aside, get that out of the picture. Let's tell you, today is Gin and Tonic Day. Yes, there's a day for everything, isn't there? I think it's rather ridiculous that it's only a day, however. I would say you'd have to have Gin and Tonic Week, so I am hereby proclaiming this to be Gin and Tonic Week. And in fact, why not just say Gin and Tonic Quarter or Year? It's Gin and Tonic Year. How about that? Well, Gin and Tonic requires a good glass. This is actually a beautiful tumbler made by Riedel, and we sell these. Isn't that nice? Very pretty. More importantly, is what goes into it. Now, when I make a gin and tonic, I don't like the tonic to be as sweet as some. So the regular tonic that people sell, I usually flip over to their lower sugar version. So my gin and tonic isn't quite as sweet. This one from Fentonmans is a great one. It is in fact called a light tonic water. And you know, the deal with adding tonic to the gin, you're adding these extra flavors of lemongrass in this case, and lime leaf, and there's one other botanical in there I can't remember. Oh, there's some juniper berry, of course. And you know, once you've done that, you've kind of replicated gin in a way, so you don't need to buy up necessarily for an expensive gin. So one solution to that is to use a Spanish gin, one here called Irem. Toss out of the way and show you this guy that doesn't break the bank. And it really doesn't need to. This doesn't have crazy expression of flavor, but it plays very well as gin, and the tonic does just as much of the talking in a gin and tonic used with Irem. When in doubt, buy Spanish gin, because the Spanish are crazy about gin and tonics. They call them gin tonic. They can't really say the just sound, but we know what they mean. And so virtually every gin that you source from Spain is going to be especially great with a gin and tonic. Now, I had a reckoning the other day, which kind of dissolved, well, it created a fork in the road for my feeling about what kind of gin to use a gin and a tonic, and to not necessarily buy up. Do buy up if you use this. Let's show you a brand new pair of gins in these crazy beautiful bottles. This is called Thresh and Winnow. They are made in Chicago, Illinois. This one is called Citrine, indicating that the tweaking of the gin as far as flavor goes towards citrus. And then this is called Foray, which indicates that the botanicals are more about juniper and things that grow on trees that aren't fruit. How about that? Like the leaves and the... Anyway, this is the more botanical, one might say, gin. They are remarkable, not just in flavor, but the amount of flavor. And I had a reckoning, I said before, but my reckoning was, first, using this in a martini. It was so intense in its beautiful flavors that it was like too much. And I thought, how can I calm this down? And I thought, well, diluting it with tonic and some ice, melting ice, would be probably a good idea. It turned out to be a great idea. And in fact, per what I was saying earlier about letting tonic do more of the talking, this will do the talking. This will ride over everything. This foray made such a beautiful, intense nose and flavor out of my most recent gin and tonic. So I recommend that you try that too. And you may not even need to use as much of the gin. So even though this is a buy-up style gin, it's not our cheapest gin down there, or least expensive, I should say, but it has so much intensity that you don't necessarily have to use quite as much in your gin and tonic. It's gonna pop. And try this. And look at these bottles. Aren't they amazing? You know, there's a restaurant up in Walnut Creek who has bought six packs of this gin already in order to empty these bottles one at a time at their bar and then finally use them for water bottles. They're not throwing them away. I'm not throwing the one at home away. Beautiful bottles, but more importantly, beautiful contents in Thresh and Winnow, Chicago, Illinois. Great gins. Let's have a little advertisement for the fact that, yes, we sell great cheese, and yes, you already knew about Sage Derby, that's how you say it, from Derbyshire, England. Well, we just added to that a Sage Derby that's not sage, but in fact, port. We could call this port wine Derby. And instead of an infusion of sage, making this cheese a beautiful green color, and don't worry, this is not frightening cheese as far as flavor, it just looks really cool. This beautiful cheese, can you see it? Let's get it up to you. Sorry, it kind of works. This is port infused, hence that gorgeous kind of like purplish modeling that you have here. I know the glare from the light is kind of screwing that up, but now there are two down there. Many of you have been supporting the Sage Derby for the last year and a half that we've been carrying it, and now it has a partner cheese from the same place, north of London, England. All right, beautiful cheeses. Let's just finally tell you about this wine that I promised to tell you about earlier. So let's get it up in front of you and show you this beautiful label. All the labels are beautiful today, aren't they? This is from Gomez Cruzado. I walked by this winery 2 years ago in Aro, Rioja, Spain, on my way from Muga Winery, just a short walk up the street to La Rioja Alta Winery, and the bodega between the two was in fact Gomez Cruzado, and I thought, that's a cool looking sign. The sign had this same font on it, and yet I had never heard of this stuff. I got back and a couple of months later I was carrying it on the shelf. The red, because that's, in fact, we generally associate Rioja with red wine. And this is in fact a white wine that's featured on our white wine bar flight. It is the final wine in the sequence of 5 beautiful wines that we have for you. One of them is in fact a dry rosé. Yes, Phuket is back. The 2024 has landed. But let's tell you about this. This is going to be about 60% Viura, which is the same as Macabeo. Maybe you've never heard of either of those, but when you're making cava on the east side of Spain, you're Barcelona, you're calling the grape Macabeo, but when it's growing here in Rioja, you're calling it Viura. Now, what else is in there? 25% Tempranillo Blanco. Did you know that about, let's say 30 years ago, a farmer was roaming his vines of Tempranillo and saw that all of a sudden one of his vines of Tempranillo, which should have been producing red grapes, had flipped to growing white grapes. Yes, grapes are a little bit unstable in their genetics, and they can mutate. And in fact, Tempranillo Blanco was born. What he did there was take sticks off of those vines and propagate them, that one vine, and propagated them, made more little baby vines, and then finally got the people in Rioja, the officials, who are very official about everything, decree that Tempranillo Blanco is its own grape and can in fact be used to make white Rioja, or it can be a component of white Rioja, or Rioja Blanco as we would more properly call it. 25% Tempranillo Blanco is in here, and so is Garnacha Blanca to the tune of, I believe, 5%. What you end up with is this beautiful, soothing white wine that sees only a little kiss of oak, and the oak isn't even new, so the barrels are used, and some of the wine was also in stainless steel tanks, so kind of a half and half treatment in order to preserve the fruit and yet let it relax a little bit. What I am smelling is beautiful stone fruit and golden apples and pears. It is nothing but beautiful, fresh fruit. It smells like a fruit stand, really, or a fruit bowl. It's really accommodating. Very lush in the mouth, a little rounder than an Albarino or a Verdejo, but still very clean. You know, it's not oaky, it's not buttery, it's very refreshing. just a little more fruit flesh in the mouth. Very nice wine from Gomez Cruzado, is part of the white wine flight this week. Come upstairs and enjoy this wine. Or just head in and grab a bottle off the shelf. We have it down there for you to take home as well, of course. Let's tell you about just one more wine, not to belabor this point of video. The sparkling wine of the week. How about that? Yes, there's reds. And in fact, I should say that whereas we challenged many of you last week with a bunch of food-oriented French wines, this week we are just saying, okay, a lot of you people like Cabernet, why don't you come in and have 5 in a row from Napa and Sonoma? So in fact, we're putting some of our best-selling wines and some of our new Cabernets that are bound to be bestsellers pretty soon, especially once this flight is consumed. So all of these are cabs between, let's say, $28 and $35 per bottle, and it's a fun flight of fruit-forward Cabernets, again, from Napa and Sonoma. So enjoy that. Sorry I don't have those bottles to show you, but we can't show you everything, right? We need you to come in and just get a little teased by the video here. Sparkling wine from Burgundy, France, Bourgogne. This is Cremant de Bourgogne, and that means basically it's sparkling wine made just like Champagne, but not from Champagne, a bit south of there in Burgundy. And this gentleman, whose winery is called Montmirail, is making a Blanc de Noir. We don't see Blanc de Noir very often inhabiting a Cremant. That means they have to use all red grapes. So if you're in Burgundy, what are the red grapes? Well, you probably know that Pinot Noir, as we were talking about earlier per the Paul Bullard event. Have you signed up yet? Pinot Noir is the main grape there, but they still do grow some Gamay. So this is going to be 80% Pinot Noir, 20% Gamay. Very refreshing, dry, it's a brut, and it's got maybe just the slightest hint of a creamy quality to it as well. It's really beautiful sparkling. To the point that we decided also to put it in our bubbly club. So you members of our bubbly club who get 2 or occasionally 1 very good bottle of champagne per month are entitled to this bottle next week. But why wait until then? Why not come upstairs and enjoy a glass of it in the meantime? Montmirail, Cremant de Bourgogne, Blanc de Noir, Brut. Good stuff. All of it's good in here, upstairs and down, and will be next Tuesday night as well. And hey, happy Gin and Tonic Day. Year. See you soon.